Just to introduce myself, Claude Reeves. I head up our enterprise business here in Canada, and this is actually part of the morning that we believe is some of the most compelling discussion that will happen, and it's not anything that'll come out of my mouth, but my guest here, Mark Hubbard from Fundserve, who will introduce himself in a second. So we're going to talk about Mark's experience, his challenges over the last couple of years, and just try and share with you a real-world situation, not a situation that Red Hat's put forward, but a situation that our customers are experiencing right now. So with that, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about Fundserve.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Claude. You know, I've got 45 minutes to talk about myself and Fundserve, and I'm pretty sure I can fill up that 45 minutes without a problem. We were talking a little earlier. So I'm the CIO of Fundserve. I've been with Fundserve for a couple of years now, 2.5 years. And what Fundserve does, some of you may be familiar with this if you're in financial services, particularly if you're in the funds industry. What we do is we connect the distribution channel with the fund manufacturers. Our mandate is to take time, cost, and risk out of the industry. So we're owned by a number of larger fund manufacturers in the industry, and we are there to provide a utility type solution for the industry, for the dealers and for the fund manufacturers to enable them to communicate back and forth. So very much digitization of the funds industry, and now we're extending across to the investment industry as well. So we've had this network in place for about 23, 24 years. And it's incredibly successful. About 80% of funds transactions in Canada come through our network. The data is moved back and forth via standard protocol. We do annual releases where we take into account any regulatory changes that have been made, any product enhancements that have been made, or any significant industry developments. And we work with the industry to determine what goes into this network that we provide. We've got standard steering committees, we've got technology advisory committees, so we're very much plugged in to the entire industry, and we operate on behalf of the distribution channel and of the fund manufacturer. So we're not making decisions. Fundserve is going to go ahead and make this change to our standards, and you all have to implement it. We very much work on behalf of the industry. Now, as a result of that, we've got an implementation process around this network that we've got that runs for 18 months. 18 months, a waterfall process. The world changes in 18 months, but right now we're already planning for the implementation. Well, actually, we're already developing the implementation that's going to take place next year, because we have to give the entire industry the opportunity to feed into us what needs to be done, or what they suggest should be done. We need to give them the opportunity to debate it, to discuss it, to design it, and then together we do the work, and then they need about 6 months to test the process. So 18 months, typical waterfall approach to implementations. It's not fast enough. When you look at, what attracted me to come to Fundserve was that we have these great connections on both the dealer side and the distribution side, or the manufacturer side. We have so much opportunity to do more than simply provide this network. So Fundserve had been a very sleepy organization until a couple years ago. We have changed our mission. We've changed our approach. So in addition to supporting this core network, we're adding additional products and services around the network. So things like seamless account onboarding, so paperless account onboarding, a secure messaging solution to allow data to move back and forth. You know, one thing that I saw in the funds industry and in the investment industry in general is that it is very paper-driven. You would not believe, for those of you that aren't in this industry, the organizations have cages, right, that they have fax machines in, that they're taking all this paper in, and they're sorting it, and they're putting it into a manual workflow process and assigning it out, and they've got 30, 40, 50 people, double it during RRSP season, to manually process all of this paper. So we saw an opportunity a couple of years ago to develop an account onboarding solution, which would provide a mobile mechanism for advisors sitting across a kitchen table or sitting across a desk from an investor to create an account, right? So, the account would be created through a workflow solution, data captured there, and ultimately it would feed into the standards that we had in place. So we saw that opportunity a couple of years ago to do that. There was nothing out there at the time, and it was a great idea. And everybody bought into it, our board bought into it, our clients bought into it. Makes a lot of sense. Fundserve can provide this utility solution for the industry, take complexity, take cost, take risk. Everything's digital. And 2 years later, we finally reached a point of implementation. 2.5 years later, we finally reached a point of implementation, and the solution wouldn't scale. And the solution couldn't be enhanced. And so that kind of brought us to where we are today.
Yeah, it's I'm pretty sure everybody in this crowd can associate with having a great idea, and then a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, they're looking at the idea going, it was a great idea 2-3 years ago, and now there's 15 other people who've executed on that idea in the meantime. So 2 years go by, you're in a situation where your idea, you haven't been able to execute on it. So that's a tough position to be in. So how did that go at that point when you came to that realization?
Yeah, and one of the challenges that we had within Fundserve is this was one of the first times that we were stepping outside the box that everybody knew Fundserve to exist within, which is providing that annual release and doing such a good job at it, providing that core network. So we convinced our stakeholders that this is something that the industry needed and that we could do, and it would. We convinced them at the time that it would take about 9 to 12 months to implement. We found a partner to work with us on it.
Not Red Hat at that point. Okay, let's just all be clear.
Pre-Red. This is all pre-Red Hat. It's pre-Red Hat. We found a partner to work with us on it, and so 2 years later, even though we implemented something, it was seen as a failure by Fundserve. And by the industry in general, because it didn't deliver on what it was supposed to deliver. So this came about November of last year, and we had a very short time period to come up with a solution. We could continue to invest in this 2 years of work that we'd already done with this partner, where we completely outsourced the application and we got something back that didn't work, and that was, their recommended direction. They hadn't done anything to demonstrate why they could be successful when they hadn't been successful to this point, or we had a very limited time period to demonstrate that we could do this ourselves and that we could provide a solution. So we were really working within the timeline that we had to have something available by June of this year that was able to scale. It was able to provide a utility type solution for the industry, and we needed to be able to demonstrate that we were going to be able to do that to our stakeholders.
I think one of the key things there is that you weren't able to leverage a lot of that work that happened over the 2 years. So in some aspects, you were starting from, you understood your process, but the technology foundation and building up, you had to build that right then.
Yeah, the challenge. It's a great point. The challenge was that we had outsourced the development of the application. So we gathered the requirements together ourselves, provided very heavy requirements to our partner, but the partner was providing a cloud platform. They built the entire solution out from scratch, so there was very little that was reusable. And I'll just briefly describe the solution a little bit. So, from an account onboarding standpoint, there are 4 key aspects. Capturing data. We've got workflow around that data, so decisions can be made around data that's being captured. Things like KYC, know your client. We had an e-signature piece, so the automatic generation of forms and the ability to sign those forms on a desktop or on a tablet. And then the document management, so document distribution aspect as well. The ability to send those forms that had been signed by the advisor and by the investor out to the dealer or send them to the fund manufacturer. And then the data, of course, was captured and sent through the process. A fifth piece was the ability to create and manage the forms that the data was being captured on. So, you know, if you look at the funds industry, for example, you know, all of the fund manufacturers have their own forms. There's standard data that is captured on each of those forms. However, there is company-specific data that's captured as well, right? So, you know, somebody like a McKinsey might have, you know, 15 pieces of information that are the same as someone like a CI, and then they've got 10 additional pieces of information that differ. So we had to have the ability to capture that standard data and then also capture the exception data as well. So, you know, kind of to make a long story short, at the front end, and I know we have a long time to talk, so yeah, I can make it long. I can make it long. But at the front end, given where we were in November, given the need to demonstrate the ability to deliver a solution, we very quickly engaged in assessment of the various platforms that were out there. We determined the only way we were going to be successful is by delivering a solution ourselves and leveraging partnerships as opposed to outsourcing the development of an application. So leveraging partnerships, and we also realized that we had to be able to run the solution at this point in time, just given the pressures that we had and so on, we had to be able to deliver it within our data centers. So we did an analysis, a very quick analysis of the various platforms that were out there, and we weren't just looking at the platforms. We were also looking at the competencies of the organizations providing the platform. So it wasn't a case where we could simply go out and leverage a platform and then go out and get another partner to help us develop a solution. We understood that we did not have the competency internally to be able to develop and deploy the solution that we needed to develop and deploy. So we had to find a partner that was able to provide not only the platform, but provide the services over top of that and work with Fundserve to bring that solution to fruition. And it couldn't just be somebody that was able to help us develop a solution. There had to be a process around developing that solution quickly and bringing it to market. Because remember, we have 6 months to deliver. And figure of that 6 months, a month and a half is gone just simply demonstrating the ability to be successful, which was that first step.
Yeah. So at that point, that's when I think we got into contact. When Fundserve and Red Hat started a conversation, it accelerated. It was very quick. So we jumped into pretty deep conversations right away. What were some of the things that you looked at Red Hat and said, okay, this is a partner that we can leverage? What were some of the key triggers that you saw over those first few meetings? You and I were both there. What was it?
So I think first and foremost, it was commitment. Commitment to our objectives. So we were very transparent with the timelines that we had to work with. We were transparent with the fact that if we weren't able to demonstrate a prototype within a matter of 4 to 6 weeks, the project's dead, right? And there was nothing further to work with. But Red Hat demonstrated confidence in the ability to work with us to develop a prototype that we'd identified, and we identified the scope, to develop a prototype that would demonstrate our ability to deliver. So commitment, competency, the ability to bring that competency to bear quickly. So this was November. We recognized that we were going to have to work through Christmas so through the holiday season, in order to deliver this solution. And we had, I think we were doing our demo of the prototype in the first or second week of January, I believe. And we were very transparent again about the need to work, through that season. And so Red Hat demonstrated the competency. They helped us with the configuration of the platform first and foremost, and then they brought people to bear to work with us through that period. And they very much demonstrated a partnership, the ability to work with us and understand how important this was for our business.
What were some of the changes? You mentioned the waterfall approach before. Now, as we all know, a waterfall approach to deliver a very fast turnaround time is a bit of a contradiction. So what was put in place? What were the things that really changed your ability to deliver? Because now the timeline you were on, you had to look at another way to do it. We talked Agile, you mentioned it, I think, at one point. How did that come about? How did you really embrace it? What were the challenges embracing it?
Yeah, so we had adopted some aspects of Agile around some of the services that we delivered over and above the network. We recognized the need to bring solutions to market very quickly. One of the things that Fundserve is engaged in is really changing the perspective of Fundserve within the industry. So moving from a very sleepy organization that did one thing and really brought cost into the industry to an organization that could provide value very quickly and could turn solutions around, not in a matter of 18 months or 12 months, but could turn solutions around in a matter of 3 to 6 months or even 2 months, if possible. We recognize from a Fundserve standpoint that if we're unable to adapt, if we're unable to change, then we face the risk of disintermediation, given all of the emerging technologies that are out there and could be put together. One of the additional benefits that we saw from Red Hat was to supplement those processes, those agile processes that we'd already started to adopt with things like CI/CD, right? So continuous integration, continuous deployment, playback. And really that enabled us to move into a model where we were developing and deploying on a daily basis. And we were able to validate the solution every day. And that was really critical through that 6 weeks because, frankly, and again, we were very transparent up front. If we got 3 weeks in and we realized that we weren't going to be able to provide anything, we weren't going to be able to demonstrate anything, then we weren't going to drag the team through working through the holiday season trying to get this thing done when we weren't going to be able to achieve it. CI/CD, playback, and enabled us to demonstrate on a daily basis to our executives, to the stakeholders that we were making progress. It enabled us to also improve the quality of the solution. So we were able to accelerate the time to market, demonstrate progress, and significantly improve the quality of the solution.
So take us, now we're 6 months in, just over 6 months since that November meeting. Where are you now? What were the successes? What were the challenges? And where do you see yourself now? Kind of looking forward as well. It's like I think there's been some proving and some credibility gained. Where does it go?
Yeah. Clearly our demonstration of the product in early January was successful. We were able to get support to continue to move ahead. So, now we were down to about 4.5 months. To be able to deliver this solution that the previous organization hadn't been able to deliver in over 2 years. So we were able to bring additional resources from Red Hat to bear with our internal staff. And a key part of this was the need to transfer or transition the knowledge from within the heads of the Red Hat organization into Fundserve. And by the way, this was another benefit in working with Red Hat, was just the transparency, the help that they provided to Fundserve, the transparency and what it was going to take for us to be able to support the application in a production type environment. Understanding that their role is to help us get there and then kind of step away. This is truly IP that Fundserve owns and provides to the industry and is responsible for running. So we were able to quickly, with the help of some of the project management expertise that was brought forward, we were able to quickly develop a plan, put together a plan, line the resources up. We also had to reach out, though, so it wasn't just a case where we were going to be able to deliver this with the help of Red Hat. We understood that there were other areas that we needed expertise as well, so we leveraged the Angular framework from a JS standpoint to deliver the UI, and very much an adaptable, a flexible, a nimble UI that was could be rendered on a mobile device. And so we had to reach out and find a couple of other partners as well to help us get to that end state that we were setting in June. We took the we went through a kind of a, not necessarily a validation of those heavy business requirements, but we really recreated the requirements that we had created up front, very much starting with the process and building them out. We took the approach of minimal viable product, right? Now that was conflicted somewhat with the fact that we had already developed an application that was very heavy, so we had to take into account that we had made commitments around certain things that existed in that product, but we very much took the approach of minimal viable product, and we built the application out, taking into account smaller stories, use cases, really breaking it into very small and manageable chunks.
A very agile approach. Stay away from the big bang approach. Deliver functionality after functionality to get to where you want to go.
Exactly, exactly. Now the other thing that we did as part of the process, so a couple things I heard this morning, DevOps. So DevOps is something that we are actively embracing. Our operation group was very much embedded into the process because we couldn't find ourselves in a situation where we were able to develop an application. Then all of a sudden we had to build out the entire environment and provide an operational unit to support that environment. That had to be a part of the process as we built out the application or the solution. So we spent the next 4.5 months. We were able to get to that end state and deploy a UAT application as per the commitment that we made to our stakeholders, to our board, and so on. So very much a successful 4.5 months, a lot of long hours, but we were able to get to that end state.
One of the things that I find interesting is that in all of this, there is a Red Hat technological platform underneath there. There's JBoss EAP, there's JBoss BPM, there's some Red Hat Linux under there. But those are just enablers. It's one of the, I think one of the key messages Red Hat is trying to get across is that technology is all about helping you get to point B or wherever you want to be. And I find this is good because in the whole conversation we just had, you didn't lean on the technology. It was about getting to the goal. And I think that's one of the reasons you've been able to be successful. You got the technology in place quickly and then moved on. And I think you haven't been bogged down by technological decisions since pretty much November.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. We made sure that we had a solid design, a well-architected design, and that was, you know, another aspect that I probably should have mentioned a couple minutes ago.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, we spent a good amount of time making sure that we had designed out the various aspects, and that was something that again we did in partnership, and so we understood the scope of what we had to do. We took those questions out of the equation before we even got there, right? So we had a solid set of requirements to rely on, or a solid set of decisions and assumptions to rely on to help us through the process of gathering the requirements and implementing the various microservices that we had to implement.
So now kind of looking forward, you're in an industry, the whole fintech movement, you know, you and I have had some interesting conversations about blockchain, some other stuff. You're in an industry, I think a lot of people can associate right now, whether you're in financial services or outside of it, that your industries are changing quickly. There's players in the industry that did not even exist 12, 24 months ago. There's open source technology. Your industry is particularly being influenced by a very large open source project. You know, we've connected you with some people, but how are you looking at that? How is Fundserve seeing that? Is it an opportunity? Is it a challenge? Is it a risk? You know, I think a lot of people might be interested in a perspective on that because we're all facing it to one degree or another.
Absolutely we are. And, you know, from a Fundserve standpoint, the criticality delivering what we delivered in the time period that we delivered it in was, it's hard to kind of describe it, because if we didn't deliver, our credibility to be able to bring a solution quickly, to think out of the box, to look at what's happening from a product or a technology disruption, and adopt new process and methodologies to bring that time to market down, we wouldn't have had any credibility. And so we might have been slotted back into simply doing what we were doing, which was providing a network for the industry, and which left us wide open to being disintermediated by somebody able to bring some of these emerging technologies together and provide a solution quickly. One of the core things that we do within the network is we do net settlement for the industry. So we'll net settle on the dealer side, we'll net settle on the manufacturer side, one number out of all the trades that they send to their hundreds of counterparties, and there's about 350 counterparties on each side. So we're able to provide one number for them from a settlement process. That is, a perfect use case for something like a blockchain. Now, the reality is, it's not really feasible to deliver something that quickly. So it's important, but it's important for us as an organization to be positioned to be able to move and adapt and adopt new technologies, emerging technologies, almost positioning ourselves. I mean, we're a financial technology organization, but positioning ourselves like what you typically think of as a fintech organization, one that is able to look at things like blockchain, things like crowdsourcing, artificial intelligence, and bring those types of things together to provide value-add solutions and services for the industry.
Well, it's funny because it just made me think of a question. So some of the benefit you've been gaining, or some of the capabilities you have to be able to deliver, are coming from the open source community. Some of your challenges are coming from the open source community as well. Do you see it as foundational that you're now part of that world, that you're involved in the open source community on both sides, you're able to leverage it for your own solutions, but you're also comfortable with how it's being used to change things?
Most definitely, and there's two aspects to that, right? So the first is credibility with our stakeholders, which gives us the opportunity to reinvest in different ways into the organization. So demonstrating the ability to understand what's happening and to leverage what's happening to provide solutions was very important, to have that credibility to continue to move in that direction, but also internally, the success that we've been able to demonstrate, how we can speak to this within our organization, allows the team to think about themselves a little bit differently. And I've mentioned this a couple times, a sleepy organization that would follow a waterfall process and deliver something in 18 months. And I mentioned it earlier, in the 2.5 years from the time that we started to November of 2015, we went from an industry that was looking for an automated account onboarding solution, needed some type of solution, to one that the shelves were full. When you start to look at robo-advisors, and you start to look at the various ways of capturing data within forms and tying that into e-signature processes and so on. So we went from having, being the first to market to being just another solution to market. A little bit of a different perspective because, we're providing the solution for the industry. So we're not necessarily competing directly against robo-advisors and so on. And it is, targeting paper that is out there, but it's only a matter of time until that shelf becomes even more cluttered.
So kind of to finish off, we're not going to use all 45 minutes, but to finish off, you've gone through some really interesting experience over the last few years. You have a lot of experience in your industry. What are some of the guidelines that you're going to use as you move forward? When you look at big projects, when you look at transition, when you hear the word transformation or competition, what has changed in the way you look at it, and what are the guidelines you've set for yourself moving forward?
So I talked a little bit about how the organization looks at themselves differently. We very much, so we need to support the process that we've already got for the core network. We really need to be a bimodal organization, and I'm sure you've all heard that, that term. And in fact, I'm sure a number of you have worked with Red Hat around bimodal, and we truly need to be a bimodal organization. We need to be able to support that waterfall process that we've got and have DevOps lined up against that waterfall process, but we also need to be very agile, quick to market, and so on. MVP, so minimum viable product, is absolutely a piece of our vocabulary now. So when we're looking at new business initiatives, when we're looking at developing on top of the services we provide around the network, it's minimal viable product, right? Let's get something out there, let's get feedback from the community, and let's take that feedback in and continue to iterate and develop and provide additional value over and above what's there. Open source was something, in financial services a couple years ago. Open source was something that was very much resistant, and it still is to a certain extent. But getting people used to the concept of open source and the fact that there is security around the solution, and you can, you're not exposing yourself to threats and so on and so forth. I mean, one of the things that I'll tell you is, from a cybersecurity standpoint, our board is very engaged in our cybersecurity strategy and so on, and we report to them on an annual basis, twice a year actually. We constantly reviewing our posture and acting against that. So, I would say that, typically from, or most importantly from an open source standpoint, we've opened some eyes around the benefits, right, of open source, and we've also been educated. We've also been educating our executives, our board members, our stakeholders, and so on around the benefits and really what's coming down the path or the pipe with blockchain. So distributed ledger, and some of the other things that I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, right? Crowdsourcing, for example, the benefits of crowdsourcing.
So, all right. Well, I don't really have a lot more questions. Is there anything you'd like to finish off with, Mark? Is there any thoughts or anything that you kind of had in mind that you wanted to get across today?
Yeah. I mean, so this has been for us. This has been an incredibly exciting time, an incredibly challenging time, and it's the first step in truly transforming our organization. And we were kind of forced down the path, but at the same time, it has been something that has been very invigorating for the organization. We've very much embraced the idea of being innovative and being creative with the solutions that we provided. Out of this, we've been able to establish work teams, and we've been able to break down barriers within the organization and bring folks from what we've typically called the business and technology together. And we no longer use business and technology. We use Fundserve, right? It's a Fundserve initiative. It's owned by the organization. So, we had talked a lot about the idea of incubation groups and establishing incubation groups. We were kind of forced down that path, but it's something that I don't regret for a second. There are just tremendous benefits when you look at doing things in a different way, when you look at bringing parts of your organization together, when you look at embracing the types of ideas that can come from deep within your organization, the innovative and creative ideas that can come from deep within your organization. So it is very much, this process has very much opened our eyes and allowed us to really push one of our key strategies, which is, innovative thought leaders for the industry, very much forward. I know that's, something that you hear over and over and over, but for us, given our position in the industry, it's very important for us to be out there and to be seen as that innovative leader.
Well, thanks, Mark. One of the things, I'll just give a little bit of my thoughts over the last 7-8 months of working with Mark. I think one thing that kind of got Mark kind of focused on some other things is that Mark's vision and ability to adapt, because you come from a traditional environment. You come from the banking world. I think that says a lot about the team. We know leadership's a big part of it. It's being open to new ideas. And I have to admit, Mark, over the last 8 months, I've really learned a lot from you in terms of, you know, you had a goal. Your goal was the key thing. Let's talk about ways of getting there. And you were very open to that. You got into a lot of this over the last 8 months because you had that goal and you had to be open-minded about it. So you didn't really talk too much about that, but I think it's, I'm pretty sure if we brought your team in here, they'd be talking about that quite a bit. So, Mark.